Hey everybody, it's Tim and Steve from Phantom History House. Thank you for watching Phantom History House Calls. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us during this Halloween season. I'm excited to be here.
And thank you for being here for Phantom History House Calls. All right, everybody. So thanks for being here. Tonight we're talking about spiritual attachments.
Spirit attachments and possessions.
Spirit attachments.
And we have an expert here who's going to talk about that and explain about it and also share some amazing stories. And I think we have some photos and stuff too. And I figure this is a great way to celebrate the halfway to Halloween point, which I wanted to mention this past weekend. We had a ton of people here. We had a lot of fun.
Great. Our big Halloween celebration. Although that's still going on, everybody.
Yeah, we got one more weekend left. But I think the biggest surprise for me this weekend was when our guests came down the stairs.
Oh, we should have had a picture ready. Well, I'm sorry we don't have a picture ready.
If you get on our social media, you'll see it. And if you got our newsletter today, you'll see it.
Oh, yeah.
But our friends and guests, Mike and Tara, came downstairs in a pumpkin suit and a pumpkin jack-o'-lantern dress. And put me to shame on my outfit. So
you looked good too. You had everybody go look at the picture of us in front of our Halloween tree that is up right now, and we'll hope that you will come see us and spend the night and visit us before the Halloween celebration is over, which is going through this weekend for us.
Yes, through this weekend we have Mama coming back. Brian Kowalski will be here doing readings on Star Wars Day, May the 4th. And also our seance returns that evening.
So this Saturday, if you're watching this live, it's this Saturday. Readings start at 3, and you can sign up at phantomhistory.com/events. And of course, you need to get your seance tickets because those tend to sell out. So we hope that you can join us. If you can't make this one, there's another seance scheduled for June 7th.
Yes, it'll be here before you know it. I can't believe we're in May already. And I think we should jump into the conversation with Victor because I have so many questions.
I know. So let's bring Victor on. Hey, everybody. Victor Peruta is with us. Hey, Victor, how are you?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Thank you for joining us.
It's good to see you.
But before we dive into my long list of questions, Victor, tell us briefly, if you don't mind, a little bit about yourself. Obviously, on your screen, it says Victor Peruta, psychic medium. Who are you? A short introduction to our audience.
Okay, well, I've been in the psychic business for quite a long time, since about 1990. That's when I started doing readings professionally. I opened a New Age bookstore at that time after losing a job at a publishing company, which I was glad to lose that job. It was very synchronistic. I was about to turn in my pink slip, and then they were asking for people to voluntarily get laid off, and I think I was the first one in the HR office to turn in this form. So I started a New Age bookstore, and I started doing psychic readings and paranormal investigation. So I've been doing this for the last I guess 35 years. So I've been in the psychic field for a long time. I produced the Victory of Light Expo in Cincinnati, which became one of the country's biggest body, mind, spirit events. It was basically a big psychic fair. And I got that idea from a psychic. I had a conversation with a psychic, and she said, well, why don't you start a psychic fair? And I said, well, what's that? I'd never been to one. And so I started one, and the first one was a big hit. And 30 years later, the expo became Cincinnati's largest, the 13th largest convention in Cincinnati. So it was a real big hit.
That's amazing. Yes, I know that you were really influential in Cincinnati, and it's very interesting. I love that you mentioned the thing about moving out of your current job, because I know many people that this has happened. They complain about their job, and finally the universe is like, okay, you're out. Something happens.
That's exactly what happened. And it started this whole journey, which has been the last half of my life. It's been great.
Very
so
cool.
I've also had a little exposure nationally. Currently, I'm streaming on the Gaia Network on Amazon Prime. So I'm on Beyond Belief with George Noory. I'm in season 2. I've got 2 episodes there. And I've also been on The View. I've talked to them about ghosts and hauntings. They flew me to New York and had me on to talk about an investigation I did of a haunted house in Kentucky. and I've been on the list. I've been in a lot of newspapers, magazines, a lot of radio and TV stations. So I've been doing this for a long time. So I'm that guy. I'm that psychic guy.
And we feel so lucky to have
Yeah.
that guy here.
We're so honored that you're talking to us tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, I want to encourage everybody who is watching, if you have questions for Victor, please drop them in the chat. We'll try to get those to him.
And somebody that's named Lakita, who I think knows you, says hello, Victor. So
Hi, Laquita.
And hello, Kristen. Good to see you. I'm going to ask your question here in a second. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, Victor, is you watch these ghost hunting shows, and some of them are very scripted, some of them are very real. It just depends on which ones you watch. But so many times it's a demon, an evil spirit. Is that typical? Are those very common? What's your take on that?
Okay, the whole thing about demons, of course, is sensationalized through The Exorcist, and by the way, I love all those movies. I mean, if there's a demon movie or an exorcism movie, I'm there. I just love that stuff. But demons, to me, when I've been researching them and discovering them, I kind of think of them as almost like a very ancient being that existed on this earth, probably way before humans were ever around. And they take different forms. A lot of times they're like little animals. Like sometimes you'll see them and they'll be the size of a squirrel, and they play tricks on you. And they affect you by playing with your mind. They can affect the way you think and see things. They're shapeshifters, so they could look like a human being, but it's really just an act. It's almost like Mystique in that movie X-Men. They can shapeshift. Demons, so they're really old, ancient beings. They can be really small. They sometimes like to take things. Like they'll take money or other things out of your house. Sometimes when they're around, they're associated with bad smells, but they basically mess with your mind. They make you see things that aren't really there. And that's part of their defense system. Every animal has like a defense system that they use, whether it's camouflage or whatever. Demons play with your mind, and they're pretty common. They're not common in the sense like the movie The Exorcist, but they're around. So they're a being of nature, and I put them in the category of semi-physical beings. This world is filled with semi-physical beings. They're kind of transparent, like ghosts. You can kind of see them, and sometimes you can't see them, or you can sense them, but they are around, and they're just an ancient type of life form that lives on this planet.
And thank you I love that explanation. And the reason I asked that is, of course, tonight we're talking about spiritual attachment and possessions. And you mentioned The Exorcist. Everybody who has seen The Exorcist knows what a possession is. But I was wondering if you could explain the difference between the two. What is a spiritual attachment versus a possession?
Okay, so when we move into the category of exorcism and possession, that is extremely rare. Whereas with spirit attachments, it's actually very, very common. So most people have probably experienced the spirit attachment, and that's when a ghost or spirit, usually human, it'll attach itself to you. Although I must say, I've seen non-human attachments as well. And they're basically living off of your life force energy. And with the story I'm going to tell you about that took place at the Belvedere, that spirit attachment died in World War II. And it was able to continue its life almost indefinitely. I don't know where that particular ghost ended up, but he attached himself after he died to living people, and then he lived off their energy. And when they died, he would have to find another person to attach to, and that person provided the energy for him to continue his existence. And then he tried to attach to me. He actually did attach to me. And fortunately, I've got enough experience in this line of work that I could tell what was going on. and I was able to deal with it, but he did not want to leave. You know, he didn't even realize that there was something wrong with attaching to someone else. But that's how he continued his life after death on this plane of existence, which is obviously the earth plane. Some spirits are afraid to die. They think they're going to go to hell. So they do everything they can not to die. And by die, I mean leave the earth plane. You know, they're already dead, but they're attaching to various people. And the story about what happened to me at the Belvedere is a story of a spirit that continued his life through living off several other people's energy over many, many years.
Okay. And I want to show the video of the Belvedere here in a second, but I had a follow-up to that. You talked about attachments not always human related, because attachments can happen with things too, right? Is that what you mean?
That's a different category. There is such a thing, such as haunted objects. But I remember when I had my store, Victory Books, in Covington, Kentucky, and I had that store from 1990 to 2000. There was a gentleman that came in for a reading, and he had been experiencing bad luck. He just couldn't get the jobs he wanted. He felt like he was under a dark cloud. So I looked at his energy field, and I could tell that there was something there. And what I do when I'm clearing an entity is I'll do an energetic stare down. It's basically I'm staring at the entity, or where I believe that entity is, and I'm staring at it intensely until it leaves the person's body. And I did that to this particular customer. I knew there was something there. So I did my energetic stare down. I stared it down. And this thing popped out of his head, and it looked like a green kind of goblin thing or an elf. And it came out of his head, and it was right there next to his head. And it looked, like a goblin or something. It wasn't human. And it leered at me. It just kind of looked at me like, what the hell are you doing to me? And then it just flew off. It left. So I had successfully detached that entity from that human being. So on an energetic level, people are kind of like coral reefs in the ocean. There's a lot of life forms that live around us or within us. And even biologically, they say that almost over 90% of what we are is bacteria or other life forms that live inside our body, and we couldn't even live without them. But the human part of us is probably about 10% of who we really are. So sometimes, just as fish will live in a coral reef or an ecosystem, non-physical or semi-physical entities will attach themselves to people and maintain their lives. It's a place for them to live. It's a place for them to hang out. And of course, they draw on our energy. And that has psychological and emotional effects on the living person. And this is very subtle. Most people wouldn't know this. Most people would say, I just don't feel right. Maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Maybe I've got a headache. Maybe I'm starting to come down with something. Or they wonder why they're always tired. And it could be because they have a spirit attachment that's attached to them. But it's so subtle that most people aren't going to know that that's what it is. They're just going to think they're having a bad day or something's a little bit off. But that bad day, in some cases, could last for the rest of their lives. That spirit can be attached to that person for the duration of their lives. And after a while, they get used to being that way. They get used to being tired. They get used to being confused or feeling like something's wrong and they don't know what. And until you come in contact with a psychic medium or a clairvoyant, you're pretty much stuck, because this sounds very unusual. When we talk about spirit attachments, it sounds kind of like a horror movie or something, but it's very, very common. It really is.
And I'm glad you said that, because it does sound like a horror movie. But before we show the video of the Belvedere, what can you say to the people who are watching that proves that this is not a horror movie? Is it as horrifying as it sounds, when this happens? And are there like different levels of how these attachments can affect you?
Yeah, so a possession, just like in The Exorcist, is where the human's personality is completely overtaken by the entity. Now, that's in the category of exorcisms. Exorcists are usually Catholic priests. Actually, the Vatican is increasing their number of exorcists because there are so many people asking for help with entities that have attached to them or have overtaken their life. That is not something that I really deal with. I've not really dealt with that. I've met several exorcists in my life. Most of the ones that I've met, I have not cared for very much. One of them, their energy is so negative. I kind of thought, I don't even like being next to this guy. I would never let him do an exorcism on me. I think he was probably fake. Actually, he was in that. He was featured in an episode of is it Ghost Hunters, the one with Zach?
Yeah,
what show is that? Is it Ghost Hunters?
I think.
What is it?
Is that the one, the Ghost Adventurers?
Ghost Adventures. Yeah, that's it. So he was in an episode of that. But I've known other psychics who've met this guy, and they say he's got the worst energy of anyone they've ever been around. And just from my experience with him, I would have to agree. So that's a different category. I don't deal with possessions where a demon has possessed a person. But the hallmark of that sort of situation is the person that's possessed feels very oppressed. There's a very dark energy that's upon them, and after a while, it wears them down until the entity is able to take over. What I'm talking about today in the category of spirit attachments is a much more common phenomenon than an exorcism or where somebody's actually possessed. I sometimes will get calls from people who are somewhat spiritually aware, but if they're working with certain populations, let's say I got a call from a doctor and she knew that something was a little off with her energy. So she wanted me to check her to see if she had any spirit attachments. And the reason that she thought she might have spirit attachments is because she worked with an indigent group of people in the community. She was a doctor that was in one of those clinics that works with homeless people. And I checked her for attachments. I said, there's a homeless guy that's attached to you. And he's lived on the streets, and he apparently died in some alley somewhere, and he must have been a client of yours because he's attached to you because he doesn't want to move on. He doesn't want to go into the spirit world. A lot of times they don't want to go to the spirit world because they're just confused. They don't know what's going on. They don't know whether they believe in heaven or hell. And, when I talk about heaven or hell, I don't really talk about it in the religious sense. To me, heaven is the word I use for the afterlife. It's not a judgment call as if somebody's been either good or bad. And, but I don't really believe in hell as a after death state. Actually, I know that actually exists. I do believe in it, but it's extremely rare that somebody would end up in hell. I mean, most of us just go into the next world, and it's very similar to this world, other than we feel love. We feel unconditional love all the time. But there are people that are afraid to leave the earth plane, and they've got various reasons for being afraid. Sometimes they think they weren't a bad person, so they don't want to leave because they're afraid they're going to go to hell. Or sometimes they just don't know what's happening to them after they die. And sometimes they will attach to a person. And I've had several instances similar to what I said about that entity, that goblin thing coming out of the guy's head. I've had people who've had bad luck, and they've had spirit attachments. They've worked with a certain population of people that might have issues, mental issues or emotional issues. And those people sometimes, not always, but once in a while, when they die, they don't really know what's happening. So they attach to somebody to kind of stay here on the earth plane. I know what I'm describing sounds like that movie Ghosts with Whoopi Goldberg, but that movie was actually a very accurate depiction. Of course, it was dramatized, but it's a very accurate depiction of what this phenomena is like.
And I've heard other people say that too. And I want to say hi to some people who are watching. Hello, Jen and Haiti, Kristen, Victor, C. Good to see everybody. Thank you. I see all the questions coming, and I am going to ask those to Victor here in a moment. But before we do that, I want to show a quick video of the Belvedere that you mentioned, because I know you have a very specific story attached to that. So we're going to show kind of like a slideshow, and feel free to tell us kind of what we're looking at, and then we'll talk about it more in depth.
Okay, there it is. The Belvedere is a famous apartment building. It's now condos. It turned into condos in the 1980s, but this building was built in 1925 and 1926. It's the first high-rise apartment building in Cincinnati that was considered fireproof. It's basically poured concrete, covered with a facade of limestone and brick. And as you can see, the lobby is extremely ornate. So this building is an old building. It's a famous landmark. People know it's haunted. The people that live there have heard the stories. But that is where I had my spirit attachment experience. I was going to dinner there. Somebody had bought a condo there and they'd finished renovating it and they wanted to show it off to their friends. So I was one of several guests that went into the building, and I happened to be very tired that day because I sometimes simply just don't sleep well, and I didn't sleep well the night before. So I walked in there, and I was in that beautiful lobby, and of course you're struck by how amazing that lobby looks. It's just gorgeous. Everything in there is handcrafted and one of a kind. But there's an elevator there, and I remember walking to the elevator and I started feeling this presence around me. It felt almost like this shadowy presence, almost like in those vampire movies where you know there's something there, but you can't see it. You don't know what it is, but it's hovering around, and you look around, you can't see it, but you know something's there. So that thing met me in the lobby, and we took the elevator up to this person's condo, and it followed me into that condo. And I knew something was there, but I did not realize that it had attached to me until a couple of days later when I went home. That night I went home, and I was feeling tired, got a good night's sleep, but I was feeling off for the next couple of days. And I said, what the heck is going on? Just feeling a little off. And so I decided to sit in meditation. So I sat down and closed my eyes. And the very first thing I saw when I closed my eyes was I saw a bombed out building. And I saw a Nazi soldier checking out the ruins of this building. I mean, it had been bombed out. And I was seeing that scene from the point of view of the ghost that had attached to me that day. So I connected the dots, and I knew that he had died during that explosion in that building because the building was in ruins. And when that Nazi soldier was looking around, this guy could tell that the soldier couldn't see him. So he stood very, very still. And then after the war, you know, there started to be a lot of immigration into the United States from Europe right around the time of World War II, which took place from 1939 to 1945. Yeah. So immigration started happening from 1941 to about 1950. That's when they started allowing orphans and other displaced persons to come to the United States. And over 1 million people came to the United States, and most of them were from Germany. Now, Cincinnati has a very strong German heritage. So a lot of Germans found their way to Cincinnati because over half the people in Cincinnati at the time were descendants of Germans or had parents or they were from Germany, or they were the wives of U.S. servicemen that they'd met in Germany during the war, and they brought their wives back. So I realized that this spirit who died in that building had followed a group of immigrants to the United States and followed them to Germany, to Cincinnati, which is, it's heavily German. And the people that were in Germany moved into the Belvedere apartments. And this ghost had attached himself to one of the ladies that immigrated and ended up living in the Belvedere. And so what ended up happening is that lady eventually died. And the ghost had to find another person to attach himself to. And psychically, in my mind, I could see that he had attached himself to a handicapped person who lived in the Belvedere for many decades. And when I was telling this story to the people I know that lived in the Belvedere, they said somebody that fits that description had just died. And so that ghost couldn't remain with that handicapped gentleman that he was attached to for many, many years. And this guy had just died when I went into the Belvedere that day. That was about 8 years ago. And so the shadowy forms hovering around me, and I knew something was wrong, closed my eyes, saw the story of his life, and I realized he'd been body hopping. He'd been body hopping since he died in the 1940s. Wow. And this took place 8 years ago. So let's say it was 8 years ago would be 2016. Mm-hmm. He had kept himself on the earth plane by attaching to person, and then when they died, he would attach to the other person, and he would pick people that were tired or easily attached to or possessed, if you want to use that word. Mm-hmm. But again, I happened to be tired that day, and luckily, I'm trained, so I could tell that I had a ghost. Right. And so I started trying to clear this ghost because I knew he was there, and he looked at me like, what are you doing asking me to leave? He didn't see anything wrong with it. And then it took days for me to really energetically push him away and get rid of him. And finally I did. But, I'm trained. I'm a psychic. I know what I'm doing when it comes to these sorts of things. So I had an advantage. But the fact that this guy thought that there was nothing wrong with body hopping and keeping himself alive for, my God, that would have been 80 years after he died by body hopping. So I don't know what happened to him after I cleared him out of my energy field. He probably went back to the Belvedere. He may have attached to somebody else. But again, this phenomenon of spirit attachments is so subtle that most of the time you're not going to know this is happening unless you run into someone like me and you're told during a reading. And then to clear these entities out, my God, this guy was stubborn. He didn't want to leave. Right. But I, of course, wasn't going to let him stay. I had to get rid of him so that I could keep living my life and not have somebody else's memories every time I closed my eyes. So that's one of the sides of spirit attachment is when you close your eyes and you're having memories that aren't yours. They're memories of the attached entity. So what's going to happen when you have a spirit attachment? Now, I'm not here to sensationalize this process, but it can result in a lot of different symptoms. One of the symptoms would be fatigue or exhaustion. Another would be aches and pains that you didn't have before, not being able to sleep, weight gain or weight loss. Sometimes you'll start being attracted to food and drink that you normally would not like, would not be attracted to. You're being attracted to what that entity liked to eat or drink. By the way, this happens a lot at bars. I've been out at the bar with my friends, and the same thing has happened where an entity attached to me. I'd come home, I knew something was a little off. I'd close my eyes, I'd start having memories that weren't mine, and I'd have to get rid of another entity.
So Victor, is there any
thing is it could create all kinds of weird emotional problems. Like you could get depressed. Sometimes this is really weird. If you've got an attachment that is a different gender, and let's say you've got a partner, they might not want to sleep with your partner, so they might not be attracted to that particular person. So it could even create problems in your relationships. Sexual problems could happen where you're just no longer attracted to your partner. And it's not because you're not attracted, it's because the entity isn't attracted. And a lot of times, if you do have an attachment, you'll be thinking about a specific dead person. If it's the attachment of someone that you keep thinking about them over and over again, that could be the sign of a spirit attachment. Or sometimes you've got your eyes kind of glazed over where you just can't, you're in a fog. Have you ever seen people like that where you look at them and they're not really looking at you? They're kind of like preoccupied. That's another sign that you might have a spirit attachment. Now, yeah, you could be just tired. That could be what's going on. But it's also true that you could have a spirit attachment. And sometimes if you're having a run of bad luck, that could be also caused by the spirit attachment. So it messes with your lives in kind of a way that definitely affects the quality of your life.
Is there any chance that you're talking about going out to a bar, coming home with an attached spirit? Is there any chance, or is it possible that they are drawn to you because you are a psychic medium and you are very attuned? Would that
Absolutely.
be the reason?
Absolutely. Yeah, they can tell when somebody's a medium. And so they could tell somebody that can see them or hear them. And a lot of times they'll come to a psychic medium because they want help being freed from the earth plane so that they could move on to heaven and be with their loved ones. So, yeah, that's part of my job. I think most mediums will find that they are releasing spirits or sending people into the light to free them because they can.
Well, that was my other question for you as well, is when you had this attachment at the Belvedere, that's the right name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Belvedere. You did the Belvedere. Did you ever think about trying to help that spirit finally move on as opposed to being staying here? I know you sort of sent them on their way. I know you said it was sort of a stubborn spirit, but was that part of the process?
Not leave. Yeah, it wouldn't leave. And then finally, it took several days for me to energetically push him out. I just don't know where he went, but he got so used to attaching to living people. That's how he continued his existence on Earth for 80 years after he actually physically died.
So look, because Laquita just asked the same thing. I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name right. She asked the same question. How do you convince the attachment or the person to go away? You're saying you have this, you're a psychic medium, you have the abilities. So is there how do you convince them to leave or get them to go?
Yeah, so sometimes it's kind of a dialogue, like a telepathic dialogue, mind to mind. You're explaining to them that they're dead in case they don't know, and that they are not allowed to remain attached to you because I just won't have it. And I'll try to send them into the light. And a lot of times the way I'll try to send them into the light is try to have them think of a loved one that's on the other side and to look for that person. And sometimes they'll actually see a hand reaching down from heaven and kind of pulling them into the light if they're ready to go. But if they're too scared to go into the light, they'll just find somebody else to attach to.
So we have a lot of questions in the chat, Victor, and I want to go through some of these. I could talk to you like all night about this, but we don't have that much time. But I did want to hit some of these. Tim did hit one of them, but we have Kristen on the call or in the chat with us, who was one of our guests here not too long ago. And one of her questions is, do these ghosts attach themselves to similar personalities, or do they attach to just anyone that's available? Do they have like a preference?
Interesting. They'll attach to anyone whose energy is low.
Okay.
Because if you've got a vibrant aura, let's say you work out, you're happy, you're in the peak of health, they won't be able to attach because your aura is like a big balloon and they'll just kind of bounce off. They won't be able to attach. But if you're tired, I never do paranormal investigations when I'm tired or if I have a cold or if I'm sick. It's because my aura will not be strong enough to repel some of these spirits. And, I've done investigations when I've been tired. And once in a while, you'll run into a dead person who doesn't know he's dead. He's to some people who have left their bodies and they're disoriented. To them, it's as if they're running around in a heavy, thick fog. They don't know where they are. They don't know what's happening to them. And they're terrified. So they're going to jump into anything that's giving them a sense of groundedness. And so a lot of times I'll run into spirits like that or ghosts like that, and they'll attach to me if I'm tired. If I'm not tired, if I'm feeling good, if I'm healthy, they won't be able to attach. So, it's really important to do everything you can to be in kind of peak condition, because that way they won't be able to attach. Again, your aura protects you, but if the aura is damaged through drug use, illness, emotional, psychological problems, depression, they can attach a lot more easily. So they're going to be attaching to somebody that they are able to attach to, and they're going to be drawing on that person's life force energy to remain on the earth plane. Now, in a way, they've got to stay within the vicinity of the person that they've attached to, because if they get too far away, that energetic connection, almost like a power cord plugged into the wall, that will get weaker, and they might start to leave or detach. So they're kind of stuck with the person that they're attached to.
So they better choose wisely, because they're going to be with them for a while.
Yeah, and it is kind of weird. I mean, I'd imagine they're just like, they're regular people. I mean, these are people like you or me. But let's say a vegetarian dies and they are attached to somebody that likes eating meat. That's not going to be a really happy life for the dead person, because that living person is going to be eating meat, and they're going to try to convince that living person to stop eating meat. Or if they're alcoholics and they're attached because they want the energy of the alcohol, they don't have a physical body anymore, so they can't drink the alcohol anymore, but they get the buzz, the alcohol buzz, by being around drunk people. That's why there's a lot of entities of alcoholics, disembodied alcoholics in bars, that will attach to you or attach to somebody who's inebriated. And some of these people that actually black out from drinking alcohol, they end up doing horrible things. They have absolutely no memory of any of this happening. And then when they come to, they might be in a terrible situation where they've been in a car accident and somebody's been killed, or where some crime's been committed and they weren't even there. Somebody else took over their bodies and did this. Now you're going to be protected in these circumstances by your own spirit guide. So all of us have lots and lots of spirit guides. We've got our loved ones that love us, who are deceased, and they're going to be protecting us. They're always there protecting us. We've got our angels, we've got our spirit guides, we've got God, we've got a lot of beings that are working for us to keep these situations from happening. But a lot of times if you see interviews with people who have committed terrible crimes, they'll say, I have no memory of it. Something else took over and committed those crimes, and then that person's body is still there. They might be thrown in prison for the rest of their lives for something they didn't even do.
Right. And this leads into another great question that Jen's asking. And I've heard you use both of these terms. What is the difference between a spirit and an entity, or is there a difference?
A spirit, for me, I use the word a spirit when I'm talking about a human spirit. Okay. An entity can also be, a human spirit can be an entity, but also entities can be non-human.
Okay. All right, that's what I kind of figured, but I'm glad you said that. And I also want to share something that Heidi wrote here. She knows you and says, Victor helped us in a residential case, and he was so informative and helped us fill in the gaps in our case. he's amazing. So thank you for that, Haiti. And
Thank
we're
you,
looking
Haiti.
forward to seeing you very, very soon. And it looks like that another Victor who's been watching has had some experience with some attachments as well. I find this is a very interesting question from Kristen again. And you've kind of touched on this, but when you feel these attachments, you talked about having the memories and maybe the cravings, but do you feel what that apparition felt like maybe when they passed away? Do you connect on that kind of level, or is it more general terms?
Yeah, so as in the case of the Belvedere, the ghost showed me when he died, and I was having his memories. They weren't my memories, I wasn't there. And so I got that sort of information. It's kind of a weird dynamic. I mean, I'm still me when I have a spirit attachment, but I'm being influenced by the characteristics of that particular entity. So they don't possess me where they've taken over my personality, but they're kind of almost like this invisible roommate that's kind of there. And they're still having a say-so in their opinions about what I'm doing or what they want me to do or what they want me to not do. So it is an influence. Again, it's extremely subtle. Most people will not know that they've got a spirit attachment, but I've had, as I said, several clients who've had bad luck. And then as soon as the entity left, and the entity could leave, sometimes if you're doing a Reiki session, you're giving that person energy, that spirit can dislodge and move on. You can do crystal work, anything that amplifies your spiritual awareness, such as having a transpersonal experience, like a past life regression or something like that, can dislodge the entity. They say that sometimes if somebody gets shocked with electricity, that will dislodge the entity. But these entities exist on the earth plane. They're lower vibrating, and they're basically looking for somebody to attach to. So dead drug addicts, well, who do you think they're going to be attaching themselves to? They're going to be attaching themselves to living drug addicts so that they could enjoy that sensation of being high from the living person, because they don't have a body anymore. They're still addicts.
Right.
So you've got all kinds of situations like this. Now, not every entity that chooses to stay on the earth plane is malevolent or has bad intentions. Sometimes they just choose to stay because they really love their home, or they just love the area where they live, or they're just very, very proud, or sometimes they want to stay around the living persons that they have left behind that they still love, so they want to still hang out. Those are all kind of examples of healthy spirits. Not every spirit is going to have a draining effect on you. A lot of times they will help you. You'll have good luck, for example. Sometimes people who have great luck all the time, they've got spirits helping them, but not in this almost like a parasitic kind of way. It's more where they're sending you a lot of light, they're sending you a lot of energy, they're sending you opportunities. So some spirit attachments, I suppose, can be somewhat positive, but I wouldn't call those attachments. I would simply call that spirit influence. If there's an attachment, that means they're living off of you. It's more parasitic. And again, it's subtle.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now I have a question. We've been told that it seems like there is the spirit of a young boy here at Phantom History House. We've had a number of investigations that have sort of talked about that. And one of the theories that we've been told from a psychic medium was that this entity or this spirit may have come in attached to a person and then decided to stay, or come in with one of the objects we brought. We brought so many antiques of all kinds of things, mirrors and pieces of furniture and art pieces and all kinds of stuff in. So I guess, are there attachments to these objects? I don't really have time to shift gears completely, but is it possible that the spirit that we have here has been not a problem?
Well, we like having him here.
Yeah, but is it possible that he did? Are those theories about how he might have come here? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a fascinating topic when you think about child ghosts. That is, it's kind of, you think, well, why in the world would a child ghost stick around? But a lot of times they stick around because they simply like the energy of the people who live in that house. So they might simply like you guys, and they just want to hang out with you guys. So I did an investigation in Hamilton, Ohio, and as a matter of fact, they based their entire ghost walk. They do an annual ghost walk every Halloween, based on my paranormal investigations. And one of those houses had a child ghost. I walked into the house, I saw the ghost, but I saw it first in the form of an orb, and it was on the living room floor playing with this couple's kids. And then I saw the orb go deeper into the house. It went up a set of stairs and through this door. And the people that live in the house said that that door is always ends up unlatched, even though they know they latched the door. So that the ghost kind of unlatches it as it moves through there. And there's no negativity around this child ghost being in that house. The child ghost just likes being there. They like the energy. They might feel the love in the house, and they just want to be there. And there's no negative effects for the living people at all. Now, I've also run into a haunted mirror, where somebody picked up a mirror at an estate sale, and they said weird things started happening to them as soon as they brought that mirror into their house. Like they started having bad luck or bad things happening to them. And I could see that there was an adult male spirit attached to that mirror. And so it would go into the mirror. That's kind of like where it would hide. So a lot of times, like when I'm doing paranormal investigations, people call me because they know something is not right that's happening in their house. If the ghost can sense that I can see them, they'll try to hide. They'll hide behind furniture. They'll hide behind, a chair, and sometimes an entity or a ghost will keep other spirits from moving on because they're controlling those spirits through guilt or through other emotional, kind of almost like manipulating them or controlling them. So once you get rid of the actual ghost that is there, all the other ghosts that ghost is keeping trapped there will also be able to leave. So it's a fascinating topic. It's a fascinating subject.
Mhm.
If you do have any toys, like say kids' toys that you brought into the house, a lot of paranormal investigators will use children's toys to interact with child ghosts, because a
We had
lot
a
of times the child ghosts will find a ball or a doll irresistible to play with. So you'll put this ball. There's one haunted place in Cincinnati where you'll put a ball on the floor, and there's a couple of children's ghosts. As a matter of fact, it was that sanitarium. What's it called? I think you did a show on it.
well, I did Crescent Sanatorium. I've done Waverly Hills. There's a few.
Waverly Hills.
Okay.
Waverly Hills. Now, have you been there?
I have not been there myself. No, I would love to go.
So I went there, and it's famous. There's two kids in that sanitarium, a boy and a girl. They're a brother and a sister. Their mother was taken there. This is a tuberculosis sanitarium. So the kids were there, and the mother died, and the kids didn't know where to go, so they just stayed. But they often play with a ball. If you if you're investigating the place and you put a ball down, it'll start rolling on its own because they're playing with the ball. But those kids followed me around Waverly Hills Sanitarium like my entire time that they were there, and they've even been captured on video.
Wow. Yeah, and what you're right about the toys. We've had an investigation here where they did put out some toys and they lit up, and there was some activity around there. And the reason we showed the image of the chair a little bit ago is that's another item here that people seem to think that there's an attachment to. So there's a lot of things around that house. And to Kristen's point, the fainting couch that she loves is a better image, and I agree with her. But the fainting couch we don't think has an attachment, but the chair does.
Well, and we've also had
Go ahead.
psychic mediums have helped us, Victor, to clear these things too.
Yeah.
So, like as we bring things into the house, we're very fortunate that being cleared of anything that may be coming in with them, and they put some protections around the house. Those are the parts that make me more comfortable. I guess the only question I would want to ask you as we're starting to wrap this up is just, this all can sound really scary, right? Like I don't like the idea of walking around in the world or going to have a drink at a bar and all of a sudden I might bring something home with me. So I don't want to necessarily leave everybody with the impression that there are these things waiting to leap upon us anywhere we go all the time. And certainly if they do, I suppose, if I suspect it, someone like yourself could help me. I love that idea. But is there a way that we can sort of put someone like myself at ease that we're not in danger of just always being leapt upon by these entities?
I know. And that's the danger of talking about these things, because people have vivid imaginations and they can easily think they must have a spirit attachment. But that isn't necessarily always the case. But, I wouldn't go out into a place like a bar, or if you work with in a mental hospital, or someplace where there are various dysfunctional types of people. I wouldn't go to work if I was sick. I wouldn't go out drinking with my friends if I was sick or tired. If you're in good shape, you're fine. You're good to go. And if you do pick something up, you can always get rid of it. One way of getting rid of it, I do clearings, by the way, and I think people can learn how to do a clearing. But a lot of times, if you don't know how to do a clearing and you're doing mirror work, you're just staring in a mirror. You're staring at yourself at a mirror. And if you have an attachment, you do that energetic stare down, and you might see the thing leave you if you do have an attachment. And two people can actually sit across from one another and kind of do that energetic stare down to one another. And sometimes when you're doing that, you'll end up seeing your past lives across your face. But if you do have an entity, you can see that entity shift or leave, because you're basically pushing it out with the force of your conscious awareness.
I like that we have more control than we may think that we know. And
all you have to do is ask for the angels to help you. I mean, that's what the angels are there for. They're there to help. We're helping them fulfill their purpose by asking them to help. So it's not like everyone's got this phenomenon, but it's relatively common.
And I like this idea of making sure that I'm taking care of. Well, first off, you've given us yet another reason to take care of ourselves, right? Like we already know this. If I'm going to be going out into the world and I've eaten healthy and gotten good rest and I'm exercised and I'm in good shape, and then I'm going to be more successful as I travel through the world. But this is like a whole nother sort of way of looking at that, okay, I'm making myself not only susceptible to the cold or the flu, but maybe also to all these other things.
Exactly. That is absolutely true. So all the things that we know to do to keep ourselves healthy and vibrant, if you do that, you're fine. But
to your point, if I'm not feeling well, I shouldn't be going out into the world anyway, right? If I think I'm coming down with something, I shouldn't be going to the gym or to coughing all over people at the grocery store. So I feel like, it makes sense.
Yeah, self-care and care for community at the same time.
And taking not going out and when you're susceptible. Right. That just makes sense in general.
Yeah, and also, if you pray for one another, or go to church and pray, or have a priest bless you, even though some priests, though, they'll run out screaming because they don't know about these things, they're scared. But, if you get a priest to pray over you, or if you take the Holy Communion at church, sometimes that'll also get rid of it, because that's a ceremony that's designed to clear you of your sins, and it can clear you of entities as well. So being around positive people is really, really important as well, because that'll keep you positive.
Yeah, that's nice.
We always talk about, the positive energy you put out is the positive energy you get.
And we think a lot about the energy that we're
absolutely
sharing with people here, obviously, too. So I love that.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, Victor, we're coming up on an hour, so we do need to wrap up. If somebody wants to learn more about you, get in touch with you, get a session with you, how do they go about do that? social media, website, all that good stuff? How can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on social media, Victor Peruta. If you forgot my last name, just do a Google search for Victor Psychic Medium. Chances are I will come up. I've done a lot of work. I've had a lot of exposure in the media. I'm on Facebook under Victor Peruta or Victor Peruta Psychic Medium. I'm in the St. Petersburg, Florida area. I often make it up to Cincinnati, where I've lived for a long time, and I'm originally from Cleveland, but you'll find me in St. Pete now. Just do a search for Victor Psychic Medium, and you'll find me.
Okay, thank you. And we hope that you come and see us here soon at Phantom History House.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to have you here to show you around and get your take on the place as well.
And thank you for taking
I can't wait.
Yeah, thank you for taking so much time to answer all these questions and explain this all so thoroughly. I do feel like I know a lot more about this now.
Absolutely.
It's
Now you're
very
armed.
interesting. So
I
thank you
could
so
talk
much
about
for your-
this for hours. I really can. So, and a lot of this stuff is trainable. I mean, anybody could learn to do a house blessing or a house clearing. So it's good to know this kind of thing. You never know when it might come in handy.
Well, and to that point that we always have psychic mediums coming here, and they often offer things like classes or seminars and things where you can learn more and more about all of this stuff, build, work on your own psychic abilities, that kind of thing. So thank you so much for such a great conversation. And thank you to everybody who is watching and for all the great questions.
Absolutely.
We love that. We're going to be here. We are here all the time on Wednesday nights at 7 Eastern. And next week, we are talking to Amber and Tina from Simple Weddings about the unconventional bride and how they help those unconventional brides have the wedding of their dreams.
Yeah, I have lots of questions around that too. And what is an unconventional bride? What are they looking for? And it sounds like that this is like a growing population where people are, maybe not going that traditional route. So I'm excited to learn about that.
Yeah, because we are starting to do some small weddings here at Phantom History House. So that's going to be interesting too. Victor, you are absolutely wonderful. Thank you again so much for talking with us.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to the two of you tonight. It was great.
Thank you so much. And if you're watching, remember, follow us on all the social media channels. We have a lot of events coming up. We'll be talking about things that are coming up in the fall. Never too early to start planning for Halloween. And send us a shout out on social media. We'll give you a follow back.
Absolutely. And of course, sign up for the newsletter because that always tells you what's going on.
Absolutely.
Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Victor.
See you later.